Hello? Yes, someone just clicked. Yeah, they're watching the video right now. They are... Yeah, they're watching the video, yes. Not subscribed, no. So what do I say? What's the procedure? You sure, sir? Just call them a muppet. That's it. And it works. Psychology is... Oh, great. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Subscribe, you muppet! Hello number ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and today's video is a response to a channel called Miniminute. You're probably already familiar with the channel due to its popularity, as he has 2.69 million subscribers, me included. As per the description of his channel, archaeology educator, environmental scientist, author, Google debunker, 2 million followers on TikTok as well. As of this recording, about 10 days ago, Milo Rossi, the host of the channel, has posted the following video, trying to read a creationist propaganda textbook. For full context, let's read the description. In this video we dive headfirst into the 2009 Science of the Physical Creation in Christian Perspective textbook. This unusual piece was sent to me by a fan long ago and has been sitting on my bookshelf for years while I looked for an opportunity to crack it open. We will be exploring this fundamental Christian propaganda book's takes on evolution, geology and all things natural science, as well as trying to unpack the harmful effects that a book like this can have on impressionable children. Join me as we take a dive down the rabbit hole of creation science. As a brief disclaimer before we dive into this, as you know, I'm a Christian, but I'm also a believer in science. What this means is that I think I'm in a position to see and review some of the things that he said, which in my opinion are representing my religion and the beliefs of creationism incorrectly. I would like to say, however, that I have no animosity towards Milo Rossi, regardless of any possible disagreement that may surface during the production of this video, as he has always been very respectful towards me, and I will in fact give him a like, regardless of the fact that I disagree, and encourage anyone to be civil, check his channel out, and perhaps subscribe if you like what you see. With that being said, let's check this out.
Creationism. You know it, you love it. Many years ago, in the year of our Lord, 2022, I had a P.O. box open. A place where viewers could send me nice little things that they made, you know, letters, drawings, stuff like that. But every once in a while, a viewer thought that it was the perfect opportunity to send me something to make me suffer. To send me this. The Science of the Physical Creation in the Christian Perspective. It's exactly what it looks like. It's a creationist science textbook, if you can even use those two words in the same sentence. And for almost 3 years, it's been sitting on my shelf, looking at me. There's an evil energy that radiates out of this book, and it's been calling me towards it like the One Ring. So today, ladies and gentlemen, it is, I guess it's not really a great pleasure. It is with my deepest condolences that I must present to you this.
If I play the video in the original chronological order as it stands on his channel, those among you who are fellow Christians of mine might get the feeling that he's mocking people of faith, and that the purpose of his video is to attack Christianity as a whole. Since I've already watched the video in its entirety, I do know that he did provide a disclaimer to clarify that this is not his intention. The only problem is that such disclaimer occurs on minute 535 to 547, and then it's further strengthened on minute 7 to minute 721, as a form of professional courtesy to the man and to give his positions and arguments a chance to be fully received without any emotional negative mindset from those parts of my audience that share religious beliefs. I'll move the disclaimer here now so that his position can have a fair chance at being received and understood before I counter them.
Okay, real quick also, before we get into this, I want to make one thing very abundantly clear here at the beginning of this video. This is not an attack on religion. This is not an attack on Christianity. This is not an attack on faith or God or any of that. So none of this video is an attack on anyone's faith. We are here to talk just about actual science. And that goes for everyone watching this video who doesn't believe in creationism.
For those who are listening and not watching, he misspoke. He meant Christianity here, as indicated by the note.
Don't, for the love of whatever God there may be, turn this into an opportunity to be like, haha, religion bad. It is mega cringe. I don't want to see it. Stop it. Don't do that shit, all right? It's not 2013 anymore.
Thank you, Milo. In fact, grazie, Milo. Very much appreciated. Let's move on.
I I want to really hone in on probably the juiciest part of this book, which is obviously the natural sciences section. History of the Earth, the record of the rocks, effects of the flood, lack of transitional forms, evidence against evolution, and the evolution of man, a mistaken belief. So we are in for a real doozy with this one.
Now we get to the part that I would like to focus on.
TLDR, in case you don't know what creationism is, God love you. I'm unfortunately about to strip that blissful ignorance away from you. It's the belief that the world and all of the creatures on it were created in 7 literal days by the Abrahamic God.
Let's pay attention to note number 2 that we have here. It reads, "This is specifically what young Earth creationists believe, which is what the textbook promotes." This is a note from one of his editors, and in fact the editor is correct, while the way Milo explained it makes it sound like all creationists believe these tenets, but the reality is that only young Earth creationists do. I'll expand later.
Oftentimes, creationist beliefs go hand in hand with the denial of many different branches of science, everything from biology to chemistry, geology, and most of the natural sciences. This is because a general understanding of what we know about all of those fields disproves the fact that the Earth is 6,000 years old.
Here is the next section that I believe needs correction. Watch.
Now, this is where it's very important for me to add that most religious people and most Christians are not creationists. Creationists make up a very small subset of that. You do not have to be a creationist in order to be a Christian, and if you are a Christian, you don't have to be a creationist.
Milo makes 2 statements here, and at their foundation, they're both incorrect. Once again, don't see this as a debunking video, but more as a clarification. Let's examine them one by one. Statement number 1.
Now, this is where it's very important for me to add that most religious people and most Christians are not creationists.
Most religious people and most Christians are creationists. Muslims are creationists. The majority of Christians are creationists. Heck, Sumerians and ancient Akkadians were creationists. Once again, the problem here is that he is using the term creationist as if it only meant young Earth creationists. The inconsistent and interchangeable usage of creationism to mean young Earth creationism is imprecise, and it leads to statements which end up being logically inconsistent, such as this one.
You do not have to be a creationist in order to be a Christian, and if you are a Christian, you don't have to be a creationist.
You do. If you believe in a creator, Milo, as I do, you also believe he created us, the Earth, the cosmos, and everything else. Thus, if you don't believe in creation, then you do not believe in a creator. The correct word in here would be you don't need to be a young Earth creationist to believe in a creator. That would be correct. Also, you don't need to be a young Earth creationist to be a Christian. Thus, the reality is the following. Even if we forget for a moment all other religions that are in Christianity and only focus within the Christian faith, the following statement is correct. All young Earth creationists are Christians, but not all Christians are young Earth creationists. Now, I'm not saying this to nitpick. Well, okay, I am nitpicking. But the reason is because online, whenever I do say that I believe in a creator, that I believe in creation, or that I consider myself a creationist, and I'll tell you what type later, I do often get told things such as, oh, so you don't believe in science? Oh, so you think the Earth is 6,000 years old? And the like. This happens because there is this misunderstanding. People don't know that there are multiple types of creationism and we don't all share the same beliefs. In fact, a lot of these are mutually exclusive. And due to the extreme reach and success of Milo's platform, I do feel I needed to make a correction video and explain the differences. Get ready to deep dive. Creationism is the belief that the universe, the earth, and all life, including humanity, originated through acts of divine creation. As we can see from this motion graphic, several types of creationism exist. Young Earth creationism, Old Earth creationism, theistic evolution, intelligent design, deistic evolution, and more. And some of them have multiple subsets. To go a bit deeper within the theological layers, the concept behind creationism is that God brought the cosmos into operation by assigning roles and functions to matter. However, an important area of distinction and debate within the Christian world is how that matter is created. We can summarize and simplify 3 subsets of belief within the theistic world, and we will also address these briefly once we reach minute 9:15 of his presentation. What I want to clarify right here is that creationism is not a monolithic belief. Rather, it is an umbrella term which includes a variety of doctrinal core tenets. And oftentimes, even members of the same religious organization vary and tend to be free as to which type of creationism they wish to adopt. Within Catholicism alone, you'll find young Earth creationism, old Earth creationism, and even theistic evolution. These differences are usually based upon how a single Christian decides to approach scriptural interpretation. Much of creationist beliefs differ due to the adherence to a literal, allegorical, metaphorical, or quasi-literal interpretation of the book of Genesis.
You are completely able to accept and understand all of the beauty and science of this world and still be able to believe in a higher power and a creator.
I 100% agree. If you're enjoying this video and you would like to support the productions on this channel, do consider that I just dropped my new Metatron plushie. This is me. Hello, number ones. Limited pedantic edition. Look at the feet. Link in the description below, available for a limited time only.
Anyway, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's dive right into this. Chapter 11, Interpreting the Fossil Record with the History of the Earth. Conflicting views of the beginning. That God is the creator of this world is an undeniable truth. Can't argue with that, I guess. If that's your truth, it's a lowercase t truth. It's like, speak your truth, queen.
I'll be pedantic in Milo's favor for this one. While I do share the belief that what we are discussing here is the truth, I do believe that whoever fellow Christian wrote this book used the word undeniable incorrectly, and I disagree with him adding it there. That is because for something to be undeniable, it means that it cannot be doubted. But our ability to show faith is based precisely on the fact that something can be doubted, but we choose not to doubt it, and it is inappropriate, even from a Christian perspective. It is deniable, particularly by those who do not share our faith. We simply choose not to, but we should also always respect anyone's freedom. In other words, if it was actually undeniable, there would be no need for faith.
The founders of modern science supported the truth of creation, and the laws and principles of science also affirm it. Nevertheless, many scientists today have rejected creation. Instead, they credit chance, time, and energy with the origin of the universe and all that makes up the physical world. The belief that the universe and all that is in it originated by natural processes over billions of years is referred to as evolution. Contrasted with evolution is the biblical principle of special creation. Instead of relying upon thoughtless chance, time, and energy, special creation depends on a creator, the omnipotent, all-powerful, and omniscient, all-wise God. I'm just saying right now, not to throw shade at the big G up there or anything, but if he was all wise and all powerful, why the fuck did he make us eat and breathe through the same tube? That seems like a bit of a design flaw. Unless, I guess we were created in his image, so he also has the design flaw. Maybe that makes me feel a little better, actually.
Little off topic, but it's a bit of a long tangent, so I'll try to address it very briefly just to give an idea. For clarification, I'm not trying to convince you or him. It's simply that with this statement, he's checking the inner logical consistency of the belief system. So all I'm doing here is addressing the logical fabric. You can still choose not to believe it. You kind of gave the answer yourself. Yes, we are made in his image, which means we look like him. With that being said, he's perfect. So for him, it's not a design flaw. And neither was for Adam and Eve. It is after the fall that anything imperfect occurs, including diseases and death itself. So anything that doesn't seem to work perfectly is due to the fact that we are in a fallen state. Now we could go into why we are not living in a perfect world right now, and I'm very happy to address it, but it will have to be on a dedicated video if you're interested. Let me know in the comments.
Special creation refers to God's work of calling the universe and all that is in it into existence ex nihilo, out of nothing. This is a really good example between sort of the difference between, scientific consensus and faith. And again, nothing wrong with faith, but here they're trying to imply that somehow thoughtless chance, time, and energy is a worse explanation than Magic Guy went, I don't know, and maybe that's just because I'm not like a religious person, so I'm not steeped in this, but like, isn't that like more of a stretch to try and understand than evolution happening? Call me crazy, I don't know.
First, the pedantic part. The way he's pronouncing it is absolutely fine in English, but for those who are interested, if you want to pronounce it in classical Latin pronunciation for whatever the heck reason, creatio ex nihilo. With that being said, if you want to use ecclesiastical Latin pronunciation, particularly if you are singing in a choir for instance, there are two ways to pronounce this in Latin: creatio ex nihilo, creatio ex nihilo. You choose. But let's now respond very quickly to the meaty part. In general, even this depends on the type of Christian you are and the denomination you follow. The doctrine of creatio ex nihilo, which is creating from nothing, is one of the at least three possible approaches to how God creates matter: ex nihilo, ex ipse, ex materia, meaning from nothing, from himself, or from already eternally existing matter. This depends on which type of religion you follow, just to flesh it out a little bit.
Theistic evolution is a modified form of evolutionary hypothesis which attempts to reconcile the Bible and evolution. According to this view, God created all living things through a process of evolution. This theory states that God was responsible for the initial creation of life, but then employed the evolutionary process to complete his work. Although some Christians accept this view, most realize that it is not compatible with the biblical record or the established principles of science. I don't know if it's incompatible with the Bible, because I'm not as well versed in that. Genesis 6:4 and Numbers 13:33. Those are both numbers, yeah. Book of Numbers? That's crazy. I thought that was called the Yellow Pages. But I would also say that I don't think that's necessarily incompatible with the established principles of science.
Yes, so for the Bible part, it is incompatible depending on what interpretation of scripture you follow and how you define evolution by natural selection as you interconnect it with the Christian faith. So yes, from the point of view of young earth creationists, it is incompatible, but not from the point of view of other creationists. When it comes to me, I'm mostly an old earth creationist, and to be specific, I am a day-age creationist. So to me, the 7 days of creation are not literal in the sense they did not last one day, but I see them as epochs of unspecified lengths of time, possibly eons. Although in some areas I do overlap with theistic evolution as well. So I'm kind of in between old earth creationism and theistic evolution. In other words, my position as an old earth creationist, almost theistic evolutionist, the creator made the laws of physics. The creator made nature in all of its laws and orchestrated them, similarly to how a programmer creates the code for the game. As players of the game, that is our reality, but from the perspective of the maker of the game, who is outside of it, he created the code, but the code is independent. You don't need the programmer to be there and do something once the code is activated, and the game can play on its own. I am, however, a theist, not a deist. The difference between theistic evolution and deistic evolution is that in the latter, a god is believed to have created the earth, but then deists do not believe that said god interferes with our world or us. I think he does. So no, I would disagree with these young earth creationists in the book, respectfully of course, they're still free to believe what they want. I do not believe it's incompatible. From my perspective, it's a bit like saying that just because there is the presence of a code in a game and the code is self-sufficient, it debunks the possibility of a programmer altogether. In other words, this is my way to say that I agree with the statement that Milo made earlier on. This one.
You are completely able to accept and understand all of the beauty and science of this world and still be able to believe in a higher power and a creator.
He's absolutely right.
It is a little bit of a God of the gaps, where it's kind of like, because we don't know exactly what the moment was that life was created, you could just say that God did that, and then evolution explains the rest. So if that's where you want to believe in God, sure, that means at least you're not denying evolution, which is quite literally undeniable. I'm sure there's going to be some people who disagree with that. I don't know how they've made it this far, which would be pretty amazing. Thank you for giving this a chance if you've made it this far and, don't believe in evolution. But I promise you, it literally is. Like, we have an extensive fossil record that shows the evolution of organisms.
So the only quarry that I have with this one is more of a methodological one. I don't believe that any theory of science is undeniable, in the sense that it is the very basic of the scientific principle to try and refute anything. But something can be denied when new evidence arrives, or when progress in science completely dismantles anything that we had before. I mean, think about the kind of stuff that scientists would have said 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, if you want to call them scientists when you go all the way back. But in general, even 100 or 200 years ago, if you had told them about artificial intelligence, if you had told a Victorian about our planes, our ability to go to another planet, they would have said it's scientifically impossible. And it would have been based on their, at the time, understanding of science. But science changes and evolves. You don't know what they'll be able to deny, just as much as we have denied many things that people thought hundreds of years ago. There is no way for us to understand how much of what is currently understood as a scientific principle or theory that will be completely changed once science progresses in 300 years, 500 years. So I think we have to be careful with the undeniable statement in connection to science, because then you turn it into a dogmatic position.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about geology. We must understand and acknowledge that man has been an observer of the Earth's history only since his creation, and that modern science has been studying the Earth for only 400 years or so. Geologists are therefore limited to observing the Earth as it is today. They cannot speak authoritatively about the Earth as it was in the beginning, or in ages past. Therefore, science cannot make authoritative statements about the origins of the Earth. This is just not even true. That's just what geologists do. I don't even know how to, it's debunked by the mere existence of modern geology.
You can tell that someone who isn't a geologist wrote that.
Another big thing that this book delves into is the classic kind of creationist talking point of complaining about uniformitarianism, which is the idea in geology that the processes we see before us today have always been the same, for the most part, for all of Earth's history. And so we can use the geologic and hydrologic processes we see on Earth today to explain the conditions of the Earth in the past. Creationists don't really like this, because in order for the Earth to have ended up looking like this in just, a handful of thousands of years, processes would have needed to have acted completely differently in the not too distant past. So yeah, of course these processes take place at different rates in different areas, but no shit.
I'd say that the main problem and area of criticism that I myself would have with my dear brothers, young earth creationists with whom I disagree, is that what they do is that they treat their own interpretation, I would like to underline that word, interpretation, which is just one possible interpretation of those passages in Genesis, as the absolute one and the only one that makes sense. And therefore, once they do that, and once they have found themselves with the idea of, well, those 7 days of creations are actually 24 hours span days, which there's no reason to think that that's the only possible interpretation. It's not that clear, which is why it's a highly debated topic. And then they do the calculation of the years that the Methuselah, Adam, and all the early prophets lived. Once they do that addition, then they come up with this between 6,000 to 10,000 years number. Problem is, there are a lot of sections in the Bible that could be read as a possibility for a longer period of time. This is just one interpretation, and what they do is a methodological flaw. When they see that science counters this idea of the 6,000 years old Earth, instead of looking back at the Bible and trying to address the translation, trying to look at the original text, trying to find surrounding elements and cultures to see if their interpretation was in fact correct, they try to modify science to shape what they have decided to be the absolute truth. Once again, a methodological flaw.
If Mount St. Helens had erupted 1 million years ago, the exact same thing would have happened to the ash that would happen right now. And geologists, get this, would be able to apply what happens in front of us right now to understand that volcanic eruption 1 million years ago. So they would find the compressed rock that is made out of the ash from that volcano that maybe has a canyon through it, and they would know to themselves, this was probably formed rather quickly, because it was volcanic ash, because it works the same way now. While this misunderstanding is obviously goofy, it may kind of seem like it doesn't really matter, because it's like, well, what's the big implication here? Well, here's the big implication here. Few geologists dispute the strata surrounding the Grand Canyon were laid down by the sea, but many geologists dispute the length of time that was required for the layers to be deposited. They really don't. Or if they do, it's like, within a reasonable geologic time span. They're not disputing it in the same way that these people are disputing it. Uniformitarian geologists believe that the sea may have covered Arizona several times over millions of years, and that the strata were deposited during these inundations. They say that millions of years of subsequent erosion by the Colorado River carved the canyon, but many Bible-believing scientists believe that the Grand Canyon strata were deposited by the worldwide flood described in the Bible, and that the canyon itself was cut quickly by runoff from the flood. So that's why this is important, people, because what the fuck? If all of this sediment was deposited in one event, it would probably be, get this, pretty uniform, because it was one event worth of sediment that was all deposited at once. So you might get some changes, but you're not going to get this layer cake like you do at the Grand Canyon. You know why? Because that same process is happening today. It's called uniformitarianism.
I won't mention the flood or comment on it because I'm preparing a dedicated video. I'll put a link in the description once it's up. But in general, I agree with him and disagree with the young earth creationists here when it comes to the length of time.
So I don't know what this argument is. We have extensive geologic knowledge about the Grand Canyon. It is probably the single most well-studied geologic feature on the entire planet. So pretty much just saying nuh-uh is not gonna cut it here. Sorry. After this, it moves to a really great little section called Bible-believing scientists of the past, to show that, many of the greatest scientists of the past were creationists, and for that matter, were also Bible-believing Christians. They believed that God had supernaturally created all things, each with its own complex structure for its own unique process, or its own unique purpose. I can't read. The thing that I just want to point out is in this gigantic list of all of these scientists, pretty much all of them end by the very early 1900s. There's one that's John A. Fleming in electronics from 1849 to 1945, and as far as I can see, that is the most recent of any of the people on this list. There's ones in here that are from fucking 1570. Johannes Kepler. Are we surprised at all that a guy in 1570 was a creationist? It's really funny to be like, see guys, look at all these dudes that were creationists, and then just refer to a time in history where it was the best understanding that we had of the world because we hadn't discovered science yet.
Sure, I mean, there is a minority of scientists today that are Christians or believers or theists, but in general, I would say, yeah, the vast majority of scientists are either atheists or agnostics. That's a fact, so I don't really know what they're trying to prove. Maybe it would have been in fact better point the fact that the actual first person to point to the idea of a Big Bang and its subsequent theory was a Catholic priest. I mean, I would have said that one if you really wanted to underline. I guess what they're trying to say is that science and faith can coexist, which I do believe, although not through the prism of young earth creationism at that point. So due to the kind of anti-science approach that they have, if I were them, I would just ditch that.
It's like, no shit. Wow, Blaise Pascal, you were born in 1623 and died in 1662. Why didn't you believe in evolution? Okay.
Skipping ahead of the part where they deny the fossil record, so click the link in the description, go watch the original video, give him a like.
See, that's another thing I'm noticing here is they'll kind of invoke the Bible and then say, scientists believe this dumbass shit. And they don't really explain how the Bible is supposed to explain the thing that they're poo-pooing because it's incompatible with the Bible. Isn't this a fucking textbook? Shouldn't this be explaining shit to me and not just making me be more confused?
Yes, what whoever created this book is trying to do is to use religion to explain science. Personally, in the same way I don't use my faith to build a computer, I wouldn't use science to explain God. In a way, they're mixing the two subjects, and this does create confusion. I agree with him.
Although it is presented as conclusive evidence for evolution, the geologic column crumbles upon closer inspection. The first problems with the geologic column is that the succession of fossils it indicates occurs nowhere in the world. There is not a place on the Earth where you can see the complete geologic column at one time. Oh my god. I can't believe that they give this to children. I can't believe they give this to children. These are the same people that they fucking complain about indoctrination, and then they give this to children.
If you're a parent and you're a pro-science atheist and you want to bring up your children as far away from religion as possible and you just want to teach them science and possibly atheism, you're free to do so. Likewise, if you're a religious parent and you want to bring up your children in your faith, you're free to do so. I think, personally, I have a problem when it comes to indoctrination when it's an external factor that is teaching my kids what they think is correct. This is where I believe complaining about indoctrination functionally makes sense, which, to be fair to these people, as you call them, is probably what they are complaining about.
Okay, this is a photo of the geologic column. This is what they're talking about. You've seen this image before. It shows life changing through time. That's because this is a fucking diagram depicting life all over the world. This is life on Earth as it evolved and changed throughout time. Nowhere on the fucking planet has all of this, because how the fuck would you get all of this in one place? We know this column because you're pulling from different places all over the planet at different time periods because they're only preserved in different places around the world. I'm crashing out over a book about creationism. So when you find a really good fossil record from a certain area, it's normally only for a certain time span. I just did a video on the La Brea tar pits. You should go check it out.
Cool, I will.
It's like a great window into a time period of about 10,000 years ago to about 40,000 years ago. That's it. If you go to the La Brea tar pits, you're not going to find a fucking, T-Rex in it. It then talks about radiometric dating. It's going to do the classic thing that every pseudoscientist does where they claim that radiometric dating doesn't work. They claim that radiocarbon dating doesn't work.
Yeah, he's correct. Although, let's keep in mind that the likes of Zahi Hawass also said that radiocarbon dating doesn't work. And it's in his book, so this is not something that only young Earth creationists do. Not that that was the point by Milo, I just wanted to underline that. I think the best thing to say when it comes to radiocarbon dating is that it works, for the most part. But it can fail. But it does work. The video is already getting quite long, so I think I'm gonna stop here. Of course, if you want me to continue making videos like this, then let me know in the comments and do leave a like, possibly, and share the video. Thank you very much, Milo Rossi, for your production. I found it very interesting. Just wanted to point out a few main things just to clarify for those who are not familiar with creationism and all of its forms. Thank you very much for watching, noble ones, and I will see you tomorrow. Goodbye.